Hey friends, welcome back. Just Christina here, and today we're going to go over an article written by Patrick Buchanan, and it's entitled Fighting to Keep America a Christian Country. This is an article that was syndicated, and this print comes from the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, published on February 26th of 1984. I'm invoking the rights of fair use. Now, please keep in mind that we're just documenting this. We're reviewing it at face value, so please don't be triggered by this, okay? Because there's some information in this article that we're looking at that people feel very strongly for or against. And it's important to know the platform and the foundation of our nation. And, you know, in this article, they're talking about 18 generations gone by of this indoctrination in our public school system, but I would wager that we're closer to 20 or 21 generations now. So you have the right to believe whatever you want to believe. That is your freedom of religion in America, and that's what makes it so great. Now, if we were a socialist nation, you would not have that right. Everybody would have, you know, have you heard about the Sunday law? Well, everybody would have their designated time of worship, and you know, based on Sunday being the designated day, if you were a Saturday worshiper, your work might not have to give you that day off. Even though it's your own holy day, they don't have to observe it because the nation observes one day of solidarity, which is not what America was founded on. We are founded on a platform of religious ideology, but they were Christian. They came here and they wanted to practice Christianity without that religious persecution. So in our schools, they very much did teach the Bible, and they did teach kids, you know, moral thinking and critical thinking skills. And okay, so again, don't be triggered. We're reading this article at face value, and it comes from 1984. So without further ado, let's begin. Fighting to Keep America a Christian Country by Patrick Buchanan. Whose creed should form the foundation of American law? Whose beliefs should serve as a blueprint for governance in American society? Should the United States be a Christian country? Questions no less momentous are at issue in the re-engaged... Hang on, let me put my glasses on here. There are the words. Okay, so questions no less momentous are at issue in the re-engaged conflict over a school prayer amendment to the Constitution. For 18 decades, the creed that served as foundation for American law was Christianity, and a rather stern Protestant Christianity at that. Abortion was a crime, shops were closed on Sunday, salacious novels were censored in good conscience, pornography was an impermissible outrage that could merit its producer a jail term, drugs were outlawed, prostitution was prohibited. An experiment noble in purpose, said Herbert Hoover, was launched to outlaw the demon rum, visibly destroying the work habits, families, lives, and neighborhoods of the immigrant population. So it's funny to me that Herbert Hoover had initiated this prohibition on alcohol because everything ultimately back then was being censored or prohibited or outlawed, or, you know, it was their way or the highway. And that's what they came here to uphold, but it was their right to uphold it. So we all know how prohibition went over, don't we? Okay, in the public schools, Protestant clergymen doubled as teachers. Catholic bishops set up a parochial school a century ago, not because the public schools were too irreligious, but because they were too Protestant. America was a Christian country. A quarter century ago, without prior consultation with the democratic people, without support and precedent or the Constitution, the Warren Court undertook the systemic dechristianization of America, beginning but not stopping with the public schools. The secularization must proceed, the court ruled, to bring society into compliance with the First Amendment provision that the state must be neutral between religious faiths. Something much more radical, however, was afoot. When biblical instruction, school prayer, Christmas, and Easter celebrations were being expunged from the curricula and expelled from the schools, the vacuum was not meant to go unfilled. The beliefs, teachings, traditions of a simple Christian faith were not simply displaced, they were replaced by those of a new alien creed. The evolutionists in public education did not settle for equal time. They proceeded to run out the public schools all competing theories of creation. Efforts to subject Darwin's theory to the same critical scrutiny that evolutionists once turned on biblical theory are rejected with passion. So they're saying, no, you can't teach creationism, but we're definitely going to teach the theory of evolution. And that's all it is. It's a theory. They're all theories. And, if you think about it, theosophy and creationism and even the other alternative creation theories like Enochian and the Arabic beliefs of the Quran, they are all ideological, and no system or foundation of scientific method or scientific evidence can either refute or support these platforms. They're mutually exclusive. And so if they are right for you in your own head and your own heart, and that's what you adhere to be a good moral individual, then by all means, it is right for you. But it's all an individual path. It's all an individual journey. And if you go to church for your whole life and you sit next to your best friend on that church pew, and you listen to the same preacher preach at you every single day, every single Sunday for years and years and years, you're still not going to have the same views on religion and faith as that person you're sitting next to. It is all inherently personal. So let's continue, okay? When the last posting of the Ten Commandments had been ripped down, when Bible-based moral teaching on sex and the family had been dismissed, they were replaced in sex education and values clarification courses with a catechism that teaches that all consensual sexual relations, inside or outside of marriage, represent varied lifestyles entitled to equal respect. When the old church taught sin and damnation, the new church preaches happiness and tolerance. Whose creed is this? In his brief and brilliant What is Secular Humanism?, Jim Hitchcock traces the history, development, teachings, and hierarchs of the new creed. That's interesting because I do have this. I have this book by Jim Hitchcock and this What is Secular Humanism? We're going to review this eventually, okay? A representative fragment can be found in the Humanist Manifesto in 1977, signed by such luminaries as Sidney Hook, who states, traditional, dogmatic, or authoritarian religions that place God, ritual, or creed above human need or experience do a disservice to the human species. We affirm that moral values derive their sources from human experience. Ethics is autonomous and situational, needing no theological or ideological sanction. In the area of sexuality, we believe that intolerant attitudes, often cultivated by Orthodox religious and puritanical cultures, unduly repress sexual contact. As Hitchcock demonstrates, humanism is hardly the benign, tolerant force it pretends to be. Indeed, it is highly intolerant. It has a keen sense of being locked into a continuous philosophical and social struggle with religious belief, in which the ultimate stakes are nothing less than the moral foundations of society. Precisely. So what he's saying here ultimately is that when we put these dogmatic ideologies above moral value, we are doing so under the guise of a situational or autonomous ethical ideology. And he's also basically calling them prudes by saying that their beliefs on no sex before marriage and, no same-sex marriages or anything like that. They're saying that you're just a prude if you don't accept that. You should be tolerant of everyone. So, but see, there's where I draw the line, because I believe that everybody has a right to love. And although I am not a homosexual individual, I know some gay people in my community, and I am proud to call them my friends. And I believe that we are all equal in the eyes of God, and it's not our right to judge anybody else. Like, ultimately, when we meet our Maker, that's only between us and Him, and not anybody else's right. So, you do you, boo-boo, is what they say, right? But I also believe that this nation was founded on the Christian values and moral principles of marriage between being a man and a woman. And I mean, this is what our nation was founded on, and there's no need to let it trigger you because this is the facts from the past. You choose how you want to believe, that we're talking about the facts from the past, okay? As Hitchcock demonstrates, humanism is hardly the benign, tolerant force it pretends to be. Okay, so we read that. Under humanism, such allied sects as feminism, environmentalism, egalitarianism, pacifism, and socialism are permitted unrestricted access to effect the recruitment and indoctrination of a captive audience of 40 million children in America's public schools. Christianity, the enemy, is not. The school prayer crusade, then, is the first great counteroffensive of a badly routed Christian community to recapture their occupied public schools and reestablish their beliefs as the legitimate moral foundation of American society. Christians have every right to do so. Indeed, they are under some obligation to try. So this is what we're seeing again and again, and it is a fight as old as time, and taking the Bible out of school and not allowing kids time for prayer. Well, it's really subjective now, because there are kids who will go to seminary from school. So they leave high school and they go across the street to the church, and they have an hour of seminary where they do learn. And it's interesting to me now, because they will allow for these beliefs, and they will allow kids to take time out to go and do what they need to do and be one with their spirituality. So if you have to excuse yourself and go pray, they'll let you, but not in the middle of a lesson. It has to be a set aside time to do it. But I also remember growing up in a time where we said the Pledge of Allegiance and they didn't omit the one nation under God. I remember saying, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So that's cut and dry. You can't read any subtext into that, but it says everything that it needs to say. We were built as one nation under God. We were supposed to be indivisible. We were supposed to represent every member of our nation with liberty and justice. And it's not that way anymore, but there were significantly less members of our population back then as well. But still, we are a nation founded on Christianity. There is no doubt about it. Protestantism, the Protestant faith. But it doesn't mean it was a bad thing. It doesn't mean that coming over here and having those moral obligations was necessarily bad. Because what did it do? It stopped us from being a murderous nation. It gave us these moral values to uphold and build our society's rules upon. And it's not just something as simple as like, thou shalt not kill. Well, it's also morally wrong to steal. And we uphold these practices in our society still, and they come from that Christian ideological platform. So in essence, we are still in our judiciary system practicing this Christian faith. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. I encourage you to go look up Patrick Buchanan and some of his other works, because he was pretty influential, and he did write a lot about what was going on with secularism and us being a nation of nationalists, and us needing to really uphold these moral Christian values in our society, because ultimately that is what defines us, and that what had defined us, Now it doesn't define us. Now we are a nation divided. But we all know that a nation divided falls, which is actually really ridiculous at the end of the day, because you can be a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, and that's your right. That's your American right. And that's the rights that we're given as Americans, to have that freedom of choice and that freedom of thought. We're not like Red China, where everybody has to worship one individual, and if you don't, then you're put into a re-education camp. It doesn't work that way here in America. But ultimately, whatever you are, and whatever you choose, and whatever you believe, you are still an American. We are still brethren as Americans. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that a nation divided falls. So that's where I'm going to leave you. And I thank you so much for joining me for this individual article. And I hope you all have a great evening. and join me back here soon for the next one. So Just Christina signing out.